Order, please. Welcome to the City Council work session for Tuesday, August 12, 2025. And before we begin the work session, I would like to ask if there is any public comment on non-agenda items. Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to our first work session, and that is Laramie Open Finance Phase 2 Demonstration and Transparency Update. Director Wade. Welcome, Director Wade.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I have talked a lot today, and so I'm going to actually take my tea with me this evening in case I need to get a drink while I'm speaking to you all. Tonight's work session was initially just going to be a demonstration of Phase 2 of our open data tool, which we call Open Finance. However, with so many new council members, I thought it might be nice to take 15 minutes or so and just loop back around to the Transparency Initiative and remind the council of the work that really created several things that the city is doing right now, of which Open Finance is simply a part. And so I'm going to rewind all the way back to 2024. At that time, there was a council goal to develop benchmarks for budget transparency. There was also a management goal to revisit financial transparency, especially in light of the modernization of the city's financial software package. As many of you know, our former software package was 25 years old. It's very difficult to have any modern financial transparency initiatives operate on that type of platform. And so we went live with our new financial software in February of 2024 and immediately started thinking about how we could make that information available with a simple inquiry from the public. Next slide, please. So the agenda for the presentation tonight, I just want to loop back around to some of the initial materials that we presented to the council in the fall of 2024 to talk about this transparency initiative, to remind everyone again where it came from. So we'll offer a brief definition of transparency, talk about some guiding principles for this work, give you an overview of the 2025 initiative's goals, and then I will provide you with a progress update on Goal 2, which is more related to financial transparency. We'll have a brief moment for questions as long as we need, and then I will give you a demonstration of the Open Finance Checkbook tool. That is the second and final phase of the Open Finance implementation. Next slide. The city manager and I, as we were developing the prongs for this initiative, felt it would be important to define what we meant by transparency. And we know we're not referring to the measure of opaqueness of an item here, but we're definitely referring to maybe openness, the idea of some type of openness in government in particular. But we wanted to nail down what exactly we meant. And we settled on the ICMA's definition, that transparency is the principle of those affected by decisions to know about the results and the process that led to those decisions. And so council knows we're always in public process, everything is a matter of the public record, but that doesn't necessarily mean that information is really getting out. And so we want to look at transparency in the way that people who are affected by the results of decisions understand that process. We want to acknowledge that transparency is information sharing. So you have to share information to allow the public to make informed decisions about the activities of local government. Transparency leads to accountability, but they're not one and the same. Next slide. We developed some guiding principles around the first formal phase of this work. I'm sure that these principles will change over time, but in the first year of an initiative, you have to start somewhere. And we acknowledge that transparency initiatives can be pretty diverse. And so we used 3 guiding principles to really anchor our work in this first year. The first principle is that we acknowledge that not all information is created equally. There's plenty of information that isn't necessarily real. There's plenty of information that has a spin. Neutral information, objective information, of course, maybe has some higher weight. And so not only is not all information created equally, but simply putting out more information does not necessarily increase quality. And so I'll pick on finance for a little bit. If we just continue to issue more 100-page reports, or 300 pages seems to be the going length of a technical document, I'm not sure that's transparent, right? So quantity does not necessarily mean better transparency. And any financial information that we publish should be easy to use and relevant to our community. We are going to have some technical financial reports that are a little hard to engage with. But if we're going to call something part of a financial transparency initiative, probably not a 300-page report maybe. We also should listen to public preferences for transparency developments, implementing activities that involve and engage the public. And finally, we acknowledge that the usefulness of information without knowledge can be pretty limited, and that we should create opportunities for the public, for the council, for anyone who's interested, really, to learn about published financial information. And so you can see those are fairly big principles, and principles that take some growing into, particularly when you are in a space that I think a lot of governments are still figuring out. And so at least in the finance realm of things, there is no one established way to do financial transparency. The tool that you're going to see tonight is one of the common ways to do it. It's becoming increasingly common, but I would say for a small government, Laramie is kind of an industry leader. When I go to the GFOA conferences, you don't see every government using these tools. It typically tends to be the bigger governments. Certainly the idea of putting together smaller financial reports is not something that is new, but it's something that not every government is doing. And so Laramie really wants to be on the leading edge of this, and to start with the initiative that we have for this year, and to continue refining what we do in the years that come. Next slide. For our 2025 initiative, we set two primary goals. The first goal was to provide structured opportunities for staff to engage with, listen to, and implement public preferences for financial transparency while providing that educational component. We met this goal primarily through our work with the City Manager's Budget Advisory Committee. This is not a work session on that committee, but I think the work of that committee is going very well. We will have a truly open recruitment in the fall, and we have a group of very interested citizens who have given us lots of great feedback, and I know will continue to do so. That group will be at the farmers market this fall, and so they're active and engaged, and that's exactly what we had hoped to see, particularly less than 1 year in to forming that committee. Our second goal was to make more information available to the public in easy to use and understand formats. And so just notice I underlined that because I think it's so essential to the idea of transparency. There's a couple ways we're doing this, which I'll dive into in a little more detail next. We're going to have simplified financial and budgetary reporting and the Socrata Open Data tool. Next slide. So looking at this second goal a little bit more, we wanted to identify 3 issues to tackle in the first year. The first issue, from a finance perspective, was, as heartbreaking as it is for me to say it, that our annual comprehensive financial report, which is our audited financial report, it's not very easy to understand. It's a very technical document. It's a technical document for good reason. It's an audited report prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It needs to be what it is. But the length and complexity of it are deterring for many people who might want to engage with it. You'll recall during my work sessions on the ACFR, I try really hard to point out the pages that I think allow the easiest entry point. You really don't have to read the whole thing to get the big picture. But when you pick up a document of that size and written in that type of language, it can often be deterring. And so in the first year, we wanted to publish a condensed popular annual financial report. So still using that audited data, still using a format that other governments use, which gives it some credibility, and a format that the Government Finance Officers Association actually advocates for and evaluates. And so there's an aspect of peer review there that I think lends credibility to the report, which is important when you're talking about your audited financial information. Our second issue was that, we acknowledge citizens don't have access to real-time information about the budget or actual expenditures. With our 25-year-old software, that access would not have been possible. But with going live with our new financial software in 2024, this open data tool does allow the public to do just that. There are two components of this open data tool. One component is what I would call more like analytics and the big picture, like over time, how we're spending resources, the functions we're spending them on, the different types of accounts. And the second part of that tool is the checkbook feature, which we'll demonstrate this evening. The third issue was that our budget books, while they contain a lot of really useful information, particularly for the City Council on the budget you are being asked to appropriate, which is one of your duties and a really important act, they're a little bit long for members of the public who want to engage with the budgeting process. There's still a lot of information in there. We want people to go and they use those books, but maybe a condensed budget publication is a better way to get people interested in the budget and to communicate that information. To solve that issue, we recommended that we publish a budget in brief guided from citizen input. Next slide, please. So to update you on progress for our 3 outcomes for the year. First outcome, we did issue a community financial report in December of 2024. That was the first year end for our new financial software, and so I am super proud of my team for getting this new report out the door, even though things just continue to change and they continue to perform an extraordinary amount of work. We also got the good news last week that our community financial report was acknowledged by the GFOA with its award for outstanding achievement and popular annual financial reporting. For a first-year report, I think that is extraordinary. We did not just get 3s, we did not just pass, we actually got ratings higher than that. And so our peers evaluated criteria for our report, including reader appeal, understandability, creativity, and distribution methods. The thing I was least satisfied with in this first year report was really the distribution methods. And so for the 2025 report, what I plan to focus on is really thinking about how we can get this information out to members of our community who aren't on social media, who aren't online a lot. We heard even at the last council meeting that there are still many members of our community who are not on those channels. And so we need to be thinking about how we can reach every member of our community who is interested in this information, and that really is going to be my goal for this next year's report. Next slide. For the second milestone, it was implementing, of course, that open data tool. I want to take a minute and just remind everyone what an open data tool is first. So open data literally means this product connects right in with our financial software package. So it's part of our, it's not, it gets information from, it doesn't feed information to, otherwise our financial software wouldn't have the integrity it needs, but it gets information right out of that software. So there's no filtering that staff are doing. That information is right from our financial software, and honestly, I have to apologize for this. I do not remember if it is updated daily or weekly, but it is more or less real time. And so that's a really significant improvement for folks who want to know exactly what has been processed, where the city's financial position stands at a point in time. It is literally almost what I am working with, subject to a small lag. And so pretty cool stuff. All about budgeted expenditures. You can see that budget to actual comparison by the fund level. So really cool stuff. Council will remember that we went live with that tool in January of 2025. This council got a demonstration in February 2025 from Spencer Katuri. He continues to lead this initiative. I am so proud of his work. He has done a fantastic job. And he has currently fully validated phase 2, which is the checkbook feature, which we'll see tonight. The checkbook is is literally just a checkbook. You'll see that later on. So I continue to think that phase one was really the most exciting phase, but of course I would think that because I like that big picture view. It is nice to be able to drill into those expenditures and see things from a slightly different level, and we'll look at that a little bit this evening. For milestone 3, we published the budget in brief for the 2026 supplemental budget. I think the council will remember we referred to that document during work sessions. I think many of you found that to be helpful. It's a very different way of viewing information than what you see in your budget book, and it's really at that highest level. What I am very proud of that document for doing is I feel capturing the feedback from the city manager's budget advisory committee very well. And so that group was part of that publication from the very beginning. We listened to them. We created based on what they advised. We showed them the drafts as we were working on it, so they knew what was going out the door. And then we had some kind of debriefing after the fact to talk about what we would do differently next year and how we could continue to make that report more engaging. But I'm very happy with the first year product. Next slide, please. So that's all of the introduction I wanted to do before the demonstration, but I wanted to pause and just see if there were any questions. Yes.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. Always a fantastic presentation, so thank you. Very easy to understand. What are some ideas you talked about coming up with some more creative ideas for distribution? And since we're in the information age, it seems like social media or the internet is the way to go. Do you have some other ideas, or have you talked to anybody else about in other communities that have ideas for that?
Mayor, through you, social media and the internet, that's actually what I thought too. And so that's kind of what we've been focusing on. However, I think we heard from members of the community this last Tuesday that many of our community members may still want items in print. And so my challenge really is figuring out how to do that in a cost-effective way. That maybe isn't a full, because I think the popular annual financial report still ended up being about 20 pages, which if you reduce it down from 300, that's really good. But do we want to mail out a 20-page document? Do we want to mail out something a little more summary in nature? That would be what I would think. And so to think about how to get that summary out, the same would apply to the budget in brief, right? And so is there a way to condense it even further and then maybe do some of that more traditional mailing, especially because of the dynamics of Laramie, and making sure that we speak to all of those members of our community. Yeah, I think Owen Schilt has done fantastic work with trying to make those processes more engaging. I think some of his work is really creative, and I actually like where he's headed with some of that stuff, where you hook in with something that I don't want to say entices, that maybe isn't the right word, that grabs the attention and then directs to maybe something like the budget in brief. And that is something that we are doing that I feel like other governments are doing it, but I was really surprised at the GFOA conference this year that I didn't hear more about that. It was still more of that traditional type of distribution method, and I'd really like to move beyond that. And so I would very much welcome ideas from you, Council, or ideas from members of the public that may be listening this evening.
Thank you. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. Will you just remind me what GFOA stands for? Sorry.
Mayor, if you don't mind. It's the
Please.
Government Finance Officers Association. Thank you so much for calling that out.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director. I would suggest that if we have the booklet, that we make it available for anyone that wants to come to City Hall to pick it up at no charge. If they don't want to do that, then charge them postage, whatever it costs to send it to them, because I don't think we want 32,000 of these booklets to go out, only for those that have an interest, and the interest, I would guess, is very minimal. So we could certainly save ourselves a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of work if we just focused on those people that have a real interest in this. And again, I think we ought to provide it at no cost to anyone that wants to come to City Hall and pick it up. If not, mail it to them and find a way to have them pay for the cost of postage to send to them.
Mayor, I just want to be clear. I don't think that mailing the full report is a good idea at all, but I think maybe a postcard announcing the report is available for people. It's really hard for people to know it's available because we only publish that now online and via social media. And those are the people that I think we're missing. And absolutely, we need to have some printed copies available for free for distribution for people who want them.
Just an aside, we might house a copy at the public library.
It's a good idea.
Would be a good place. Councillor Freed?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. A lot of really good information here, and I think to kind of echo to some of the other council members have said, I think using at least some of our Fifth Tuesday meetings or some sort of open house once this report is published, in addition to what you're talking about, and we have these work sessions that you've spoken at in the public eye, but I think that would be another great way to get all the information you and your team have been working on out. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bowling?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. And big hats off to Spencer Katuri as well for the work on that. I remember back in February playing around with the Open Finance tool and just learning how cool and actually easy it was to just ask a random question and get some information on that. So I appreciate that this is continuing to go on. Just some off the top of the dome thoughts about this idea of distribution, and I feel like I might be of the generation that straddles a little bit the information dissemination through social media and then also the need to just like pick up a print copy of something somewhere. And so in thinking of a 300-page report condensed down to a 20-page report, but then also the possibility of a postcard that gets mailed or something like that, if it was possible to condense some of this information in a digestible way that maybe has a fun graphic format or something into a document that's 3 to 5 pages long, and instead of necessarily mailing it to every citizen in Laramie or requiring that people come pick it up, like I'm still the kind of person that will pick up a free periodical when I'm at Night Heron getting a cup of coffee. Or at Sunshine Coffee or something like that, and or people, the kind of person that looks at posters when they are put in like public information areas in our bars, in our restaurants, in our community spaces and things like that. So I feel like that I would be thrilled to be buying a latte and look down and say, oh, okay, well, I think I'll take a look at that. I'll pick that free publication up and take it home and look at it. Or maybe it's just on my fridge, but regardless, that's another avenue of dissemination. And it also might mean that it's a limited print run, right? And then we're not like mailing 33,000 copies of a document across the city. Anyway, just some off the top of the head thoughts, but thank you for the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to see the checkbook.
So, Council, Honorable Mayor and Council members, I will jot down those are actually very good ideas, and I will jot them down after my presentation. And as we start to think about our work for this next year, if I reach out to you and say, hey, can you remind me, that we can share in that conversation again, because I think there are some pretty good ideas. What's been on my mind is actually being out person to person a little bit more in different groups and talking about some of these things too. And so it's not always maybe a poster or a postcard or that print that you're working with, but people to people, right? Because I think that that really, really works. Okay. So, on your screen, you are looking at the home page of the checkbook feature in the Open Finance tool. We will be going live with this feature sometime this fall. The timing is TBD. The product is fully vetted, so it is ready to go live in that sense. But you may remember from the first phase that we published some user guides, some videos to really make that learning curve be as minimal as it could be. That is the piece we have yet to complete, and the team really needs to get through their critical year-end deadlines before they can pick this work up again. And so we're thinking sometime sometime mid-fall will be the official launch of this checkbook feature, and we're going to support it with the same rollout methodology that we had the first time. If any of you use those videos, if any of you use those user guides, and you have some feedback for us, please reach out to me at any time, because we are ultimately just trying to make these tools easy to use for anyone who picks them up. So looking at this homepage here, you're going to see that you'll immediately start looking at all spending for a fiscal year. We are in fiscal year 2025, although we have transitioned into 2026. As some of you may realize, a lot of our financial activity is still wrapping up for 2025 because we're paying for expenditures that were actually incurred prior to June 30th. And so 2025 is our best example for this demonstration. Just like the, we'll call it the financial analytic phase maybe of open finance, you really need to start exploring the checkbook with a question in mind and a level of inquiry in mind. You will see it defaults to the level of fund, but you can choose fund, department, division, category, vendor, or account as your types of filters. And you may remember from the first phase that our user guides talk about what each one of these things is, because we know that even the use of those terms is not necessarily going to be understood the first time someone picks this up. And so funds, those are those separate accounting entities that are all about the business purpose. Departments are the big departments you would think about, like fire, police, administrative services. We're a small department, but a department nonetheless. Public works, things of that nature. And then divisions are areas of operation within those departments. Categories are kind of broader categories of expenses. Vendors are new to the checkbook phase. I think you guys are going to like this one. And accounts are the type of expenditure. And so those are the various ways that you can inquire on information. And so you can see here, just for the purposes of demonstration, our largest fund from an expenditure standpoint is the utility fund. That's a combination of the water and wastewater fund. The second largest fund is the general fund, and you'll remember that's our most complex fund. And so if we click on the general fund, we're going to be able to see, to drill down into more information that's at that department level. And so once a user clicks on, once they make a choice, even if you don't know what choice you're making, I think it becomes pretty apparent pretty quickly what your level of inquiry is and where you're headed. To get back at any time, you can simply navigate to all spending, which is on the side here, and it's just going to kind of reset that for us. And so basic navigation I wanted to point out. I also wanted to ask you, Council, what level of inquiry you would like to dive into this evening. Would you like to look at fund, department, division, vendor, account? Those are I think the best ones. Anyone have a preference? Maybe. Vendor is new, and I think new is exciting, and so if we click on vendor, we can see for all of 2025 who we paid the most money to, basically. You can see that for every single vendor. So there are no filters here. So we are not doing anything on the background to keep expenditures out of the Open Finance checkbook tool. So every transaction that goes through accounts payable is actually in this data tool. And so if you see here, okay, we have all spending broken down by vendor. Simon Contractors was our biggest vendor for the last year. And if you scroll down further on the screen, you can see exactly how much we paid them. And so you don't have to actually see, you don't have to click in to see what those totals are. You can see them right there on the bottom of the screen. But let's say we want to see the specific invoices because maybe we're aware of a project they're doing and we just want more information. Mayor, I'm happy to take a question if any of council members have any.
Councilor Newman.
Is there any way you can like blow this up like to 120%? Sorry, it's kind of hard for me to.
It would help yeah.
Maybe not, yeah. That's.
Okay, so, perfect. Yeah. And so that's better for me too. I appreciate that. I was struggling a little bit. And so you can see if you hover, it's that 5.68 million, and let's just double click on that. And then you can see a little bit more information here in a graphical form, but I think many people are just going to want to go to this checkbook tool. And in this checkbook tool, you're going to see every single transaction
Jen.
associated with that dollar amount.
Excuse me. City Clerk, the text box, if you could move that up to the heading. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so from there, you can see the vendor, the fund, the expenditure occurred in, the division it occurred in, the description of that expenditure, the invoice date, the amount, and then it's going to be hard for me to see the other fields, but there are some other fields there that people might be interested in. But these are the fields that most people, this is perfect, thank you. So from here, what I also want to point out is you can download all of these transactions. You actually could download all of our transactions from the first page. And so if you prefer to look at this information in Excel, if that's what floats your boat, simply click download, you're going to have that information. The lowest level of inquiry that you can get into is clicking on this little, it looks like a little check with a magnifying glass. You can click on that icon and see all of the rest of the payment detail that might not be displayed on the first screen. Really what you're going to get there, you'll see the check number and the check date. And so there's not a lot, in my opinion, there's not a lot at that check level. Some people might find it useful. There's certainly nothing wrong with going there. Our content manager does not integrate with this product, so you can't get to the paper invoice there. But remember, this is housed in our financial software package, which does contain all of those invoices, which are audited and subject to all of our internal controls. And so what you're getting, though, are really all of those expenditures, like I said, that go through AP with no filters, which is pretty cool. And this is the same way, these checkbook features, they're not something that everyone is doing. Again, it tends to be larger governments, but they look about the same. So this is about the functionality that I've seen in many of these tools. The difference in ours is that we don't want the interface to be openly political in any way. We just want the data to speak for itself. And so sometimes when you go into these tools, you'll see the treasurer's face on the tool, like that's so not what we want here. We just want people to be able to get in, get the information they need, and have a lot of good resources to be able to figure out the tool. And of course, anyone can call us with questions as they're exploring it. And so Council, the demonstration is really that simple. That's the checkbook feature of Open Finance. And we would consider Open Finance fully implemented once this goes live in the middle of the fall and our 2025 goals completed. And happy to answer any final questions you may have about this product or the Financial Transparency Initiative in general.
Councilors, questions and/or comments? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. Just to comment, thanks for making our jobs easier on council. One of the things I think in the most recent weeks, and even going back to January when some of us newer council members and obviously some of the older ones have been here for a while, but people are always asking how money's spent. People are always asking, what paved that road, where did that money come from, all these questions, and to be able to have a tool that is in real time that they can download, at that level of being able to be broken down, I think is fantastic. So just really appreciate all the work that you and your team and previous councils have done to get to this point, but I know that was no easy task. It was probably taking a long time, and now we get to reap the benefits, so really excited for it to roll out, and thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Richardson.
Kudos, thanks, Mayor, for all of the work in this, and I just so appreciate it. I've had spoken with other couple cities, and they've been looking into, what tools should they use, that sort of thing, and I've pointed them to this every time because I think it's just so easy to use, so just really appreciate it. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, too, for the public that are here and anyone watching online, this is just a checkbook feature that we're talking about, but this Open Finance is currently live, and there's been work sessions on it, and you can see a lot of other things about our budget, and all this correct, Director Wade.
Director Wade.
Mayor, if I may, that's
Yes.
actually, Councilmember Freed, I appreciate you saying that. I was actually going to wrap up with just that. The other phase of Open Finance is really cool, and we are happy to not only are there user guides out there and videos out there to help people use these tools, but we are beyond happy to sit down with anyone who's interested, who doesn't immediately get it, to help them come to the answer that they're trying to find. And so if you do reach out to city staff to work with you, that's the stance we're going to take on it, is we'll ask you what you want to explore, and we'll try to help you get there.
Thank you. Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Wade. And apologies, just one last thought. This is such an excellent tool of transparency, as is the currently live software, which I think, speaks to a goal that we have about public engagement, transparency, and outreach, and is also a criticism that we hear a lot. And it's very commendable to see the city take a step that is this nuanced. And then it leads me to think, well, how do we let people know that? And yes, I think that some of that is incumbent on staff, but the way I start to think about it is like how that incumbency needs to start to rely more on this governing body of 9 to make sure that people understand that tool is there, because a tool is only as useful as there are people to use it. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. And Director Wade, I just want to commend you and your entire staff for the years of work that it has taken to onboard the system, and for the time that you've spent in providing us excellent instruction and patiently guiding us through the process, which I am finding very easy and facile to use. So thank you very much, and I would like to reiterate to the public that when Director Wade says she's willing to work with you and to help you, she really means it. And so thank you very much. So next, I'd like to ask, is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to our next work session, which is the presentation of the process of the First Street Parking Improvement Project by the City of Laramie with WWC and Norris Design. And I welcome Planner Shahidi, and I'll have you introduce the rest of your crew. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Mayor, Council, good evening. It's always a little disappointing to come behind Director Wade because she does such an amazing job and the bar goes so high. So hopefully we can keep you all engaged with this. I'm here tonight to present our First Street project. This was an initiative started by the last council that was looking at a few different aspects of downtown and the parking situation in downtown and stormwater stuff there. This project is a collaboration with the City of Laramie, with Assistant Manager Todd Fieser and myself. Norris Design out of Fort Collins, they're our landscape architect and responsible for public engagement. And then also WWC, my apologies, Norris Design with Kara Skoy, and then WWC with Jake Schneider and William Mummy. We're all here. Did we get Kara online? Perfect. Tonight we're going to go over this in a somewhat condensed way, but we're going to go over kind of what this project was, how it got started, what we were looking at in the scope of the project. We're going to be talking about our 2 outreach events and kind of the lessons that we learned and what we saw come out of it. We're going to talk about the concepts that we are presenting here tonight. And then we're going to talk about the next steps and how we move forward from this meeting and kind of how this project looks. First, let me just talk about what this project's objectives specifically were and what the RFP was when it was going out. Looking at this project, and one of the things that we have heard repeatedly throughout the downtown is that there is an issue with parking. Whether perceived or real, that was not the question of this project. It was, what could we do to improve it in the downtown commercial area? So that was first and foremost one of the most important things, evaluating our options, looking at the road over on First Street between Garfield and Park Avenue, and then also evaluating the best way to improve and increase parking within the Jackalope parking area, which, if you are not familiar with those names, that's the parking lot where the farmers market is. We also wanted to look at accessibility issues. That area is kind of underdeveloped in some ways, and things like curb, gutter, sidewalk are somewhat lacking, and so folks who may have issues moving around certainly have safety issues in this area, and probably leads to one of the reasons why it is underutilized in a lot of ways. And then the third thing we were looking at was stormwater and drainage. This area is one of the areas that doesn't have adequate systems in place to deal with stormwater. I had the opportunity to go out there after our most recent storm this weekend, and it is, the movement of the water is kind of to the east back towards the buildings over there, and it kind of ditches on its way back. And so curb and gutter over there certainly do make it a lot, or the lack of curb and gutter over there certainly makes it difficult to manage any major storm events over there. Yeah, with that, oh, sorry, this is one is also. And this one, for this project, we did, like we do with most projects, go out for public comment. We sent out letters to adjacent property owners to notify them. This included every business and property owner within the downtown commercial area, and also any owners of properties maybe that wouldn't be considered within that area, but within 300 feet. We chose 300 feet because that's what we do for planning projects generally. That's the requirement per code. We potentially could have done more, but we did not. We wanted to kind of keep it condensed to the folks that would be the most impacted by this. Although it was, we also put out a notification on Facebook and our social media in order to get the word out and try to get people involved with this as much as possible. This project started in March with the initial online survey. We moved into April with our first meeting, talking about, and we will go over kind of more specifics with that. And then we had another neighborhood meeting and survey starting in May. From then forward, we started with the conceptual design phase and looking towards what we would present to you today in August. And I'm going to hand this off to Kara, if hopefully she's able to.
Yes, I'm on. Good evening. Joseph, thanks for the introduction. This is Kara with Norris Design. And as Joseph mentioned, part of the process here was to engage the community and collect input on this. So to achieve this, 2 in-person neighborhood meetings were held along with the corresponding online surveys. And the goal of this first outreach effort was to provide information about the project to the community and gain their feedback on what the priorities for improvement would be. So this engagement included questions to determine the primary way the community uses the park, as well as what their concerns might be for the parking lot and First Street in terms of parking itself and the user experience. In addition to the survey questions, character imagery was provided as a ranking tool to help determine what the community's top priorities would be for improvements. So these infographics kind of just summarize everything that we heard I'm not going to go through each one of these things, but I did want to highlight that as far as pedestrian and safety updates, sidewalk repairs, and additional sidewalks and lighting improvements ranked the highest. We did hear that damaged paving was an issue with the drainage. And then we did hear that improved pedestrian circulation was the #1 priority for park improvement. So the images on the left show the ranking of the character imagery and what the priorities should be for improvements there. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is that we did ask what, if any, impacts there would be if First Street were to turn into a one-way street. And what we heard from that was that 47% of people thought that there would be no impact at all, and then 31% thought there would be somewhat or very little impact. So this was the information that we started with. And next slide, Joseph. Thank you. So this gets into the nitty-gritty of all of the survey questions. So these are ranked as far as the number of mentions received. So you can see on here that parking and traffic, accessibility, and facilities and amenities and safety were the top 4, with parking and traffic being the #1, with parking, diagonal parking, the one-way street, business overflow parking, and RV parking being issues on First Street. Next slide. So the goal of the second outreach meeting was to present 2 concepts for comparison that achieve the project objectives that Joseph mentioned, as well as incorporate the community input and feedback that we received in the first outreach effort. So the foundation of both of these concepts shown, and this is just the south side of the park, south of the historic depot itself. But the foundation of both of these concepts includes the expansion of the Jackalope parking lot and improvements to First Street. So the line work that you see here in terms of, the diagonal parking and the curb and gutter, that's the same with both concepts. What we're trying to do by showing 2 is show the vision of what could happen on the interior of Depot Park. So the top option has an attached sidewalk at the parking and is more of a streetscape appearance, whereas the one for concept B, the sidewalk is detached and meanders through the park and provides more direct access to the amenity areas and the historic snow train. Next slide. So this is north of the depot. So you can see here we've expanded the Jackalope parking lot, and then the concepts differ here with how the green space is programmed, with the stage and plaza area being where it has historically always been, the open lawn, and then the play area versus a flex parking area / plaza. And so what we did here then was ask the community to look at these, compare, and provide feedback. So next slide. So this, again, is just a brief summary of what we heard after walking through the concepts with the community. So on the right are the preferred character images. We had boards set up in person and online where people could pick their favorite character images, and these were the top ranked ones. And then in terms of the concept comparisons, you can see that concept B was the favored one with a park-like aesthetic. And then we did ask the community if they felt that these concepts addressed the ADA issues, and that feedback was very positive. So next slide. So again, we just have provided here a ranking of what we heard by mention. So the top one being that people wanted to preserve the cottonwoods, preserve shade in the park, and kind of replant and replace the trees over time and minimize the green space loss. And then, of course, there were additional comments on parking. We did hear that back-in diagonal parking would be the most beneficial. But the remaining of these, are much less than these top two, so we won't go through all of them. So, Joseph, next slide. And next. And so this is just kind of the last of the comments that we heard. So next slide. So this is where we get into the final concept, where we have taken the input that we have heard while also trying to achieve the project objectives. The next slide.
Okay, so now taking the project objectives and moving them, as Kara had mentioned here, first we're going to talk about parking, and then the ADA accessibility, and then the third slide would finally be drainage issues. So on the note of parking here, you'll notice we have one-way, or first of all, I guess we'll draw our attention to First Street. We have a one-way drive aisle from the north to the south, from Garfield down to Park, which is consistent with what is on North First Street, over there by the fence right next to the train and Lovejoy's and all of that. We also, as Kara mentioned, decided through input from the public, from the Traffic Safety Commission and city engineers, to do back-in parking for the benefits it provides, namely that it minimizes backing maneuvers into traffic, and you can more easily and safely unload your vehicle, especially with kids at a park. Moving to the numbers, you can see the existing parking number there at the bottom left of the chart is 171. The proposed is 206, which is an increase of 35 or 20%. And this includes 5 additional ADA spaces, 4 of which were retained in the parking lot, and 5 proposed along First Street. And those are spread out, 1 per block to make easy access for the disabled folks to make it to the amenities. The parking lot at the upper left-hand corner is currently fenced in, if you take note from farmers markets and whatnot when you're downtown. This chart is sort of under the presumption that we would modify that fence and gain, I think it's 13 additional spaces up there. And I think I'll go to the ADA slide here. So for ADA, we have the primary pathways and secondary pathways as shown. In orange is the primary pathways, which is primarily adjacent to First Street. And currently on the east side of the First Street, there's no sidewalk. And then somewhere in between the existing parking lot and the historic depot is where the sidewalk on the west side terminates and then does not continue further south. So this sort of has an interconnectivity to it to allow those who use those ADA spaces especially to navigate the whole site. And then the secondary pathways is to really see the backside of the historic train, as well as tie the parking lot to the amenities, the depot, the sheltering structures. And for farmers markets and other events, it's good means of transportation.
Mayor, council members, I want to back up and just take the opportunity to thank you for letting us present this before you guys tonight. I'm going to be talking about some drainage issues, which if you've been out there, everybody knows there's some pretty bad drainage issues on the Jackalope parking lot area. A lot of that is just surface puddling, and our idea behind fixing this is going to be, resurfacing the Jackalope parking lot, and then we would take, ideally, storm drainage and a few inlets in the parking lot, capture that drainage and route it all the way down to the south. And then we would have a detention pond in the south where the little blue kind of odd-shaped figure is on the left side of the page, would be a small, shallow detention pond where we could hopefully reduce the runoff and the drainage from this whole area. And along the street, as we move to the south, we would have additional inlets and capture some more stormwater off of the street and put it into the detention pond, which ultimately we would want to throttle the release of that detention pond so that we would hopefully improve the drainage issues that people experience on First Street that we heard a few comments of some people who have some houses. I think one person that was most impacted, they live or have property on the corner of Sheridan and First Street, and we would, do our best to improve any drainage issues that we might encounter or somebody else might encounter there. And what we really don't want to do is create another storm drainage issue downstream from where we fix it. If we can, we want to make it better, but we don't want to make anything worse. And with us being so far down and close to the river, it is difficult to get rid of the water because the river doesn't run fast enough. So with that, I think that pretty much addresses any of the and all of the drainage that we're hopefully planning on doing. And we'll work closely with city engineering to make sure that we're meeting the expectations that they would like to see throughout this project. And Kara, I think I'm going to toss it back to you. Is that right? Or...
It is, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jake. So we wanted to highlight the accessibility, circulation, and the stormwater improvements before we actually got to the rendered concept that we ended with. So what you're seeing is the south end of Depot Park with the historic snow train. So if you start on the left-hand side, that is the south entry feature. And so what you can see is that, based on the feedback that we heard, this resembles concept B from the two options presented. So as you meander through the site, you pass through number 1, which is the relocated historic shelter that is currently at Depot Park. And that faces kind of the open space where Jake may need to have stormwater detention. And then you kind of meander up towards the historic snow train. There's a secondary path that goes along the backside of that. But as you walk through there, there's pedestrian lighting, opportunities for seating. And then as you get a little past the mid-block, you see the entry from near East Sheridan Street. So there's an attached sidewalk on the east side, whereas on the west side it's detached and in the site. So we have relocated the rail crossing bars that are currently on site. Those would remain, and then the proposed trees that we show would be in these groupings rather than in a straight line along the parking. So the path continues to meander and would go right past where we're proposing a new play area and a rail-inspired shelter that would also mirror the shelter that would be on the north side. So next slide. So then coming into the park from the south and heading north, you can see the rail-inspired shelter that would also function as the stage, and the open lawn, which would be seating for concerts and other events happening. Where you see the number 2, that would be a rail-inspired swing promenade, so you would have seating that would face the open lawn area as well as the proposed play area, which is number 10. And it leads up to this half circle form. So these diagonals and the half circular form are a nod to a railway roundhouse. That was one of the character images that was selected. So that's the inspiration for this form. And so what we've tried to do with this concept is provide a larger play area on the south and a smaller one on the north here for when there are events and festivals happening. And then you can see there are from the sidewalk on the east side, there are connections into the park and to the parking lot. And then as you continue north along the streetscape, there are new trees proposed within planting areas, and there would be bench seating and some other urban design elements as you move towards the north. And I believe that concludes everything we have to talk about in terms of the concept, so I'm going to turn it over to Joseph to talk about the trees.
Now kind of the subject that I'm sure you all have been aware of. There's been a petition out about this, kind of specifically asking us and demanding a little bit more about the trees and the health of those trees over there. As we all know, the tree area is named such because of the cottonwoods in the area. This area would definitely be a part of that, and it does have an extensive canopy of cottonwoods already there. As part of this process, we did use our city arborist to evaluate the trees and the health of the trees in order to determine the viability of saving them or what the best option was for them. We'll start with the north side, the side closest to the Jackalope parking lot. And the evaluation that was conducted on that site was bleak, to say the least. Those trees have been through quite a bit, a lot of pruning, and are on their last cycle of life. They are all fairly old, 80-plus years old, and the suggested remediation effort for that section of this property was to remove them. Not ideal, but it is what it is. The second area is a little bit more complex. The south side, the trees are in better health. But they are also, for the most part, equally as old. There is a few within there that are younger, that are kind of more at the beginning cycles of their life. However, this area has also been significantly less impacted. Some of the things that you see on the north side, the development that has occurred over there on the north side has affected those trees. And any development on this side probably would affect the trees equally so. Not only do we have to worry about the trees themselves in the way of any infrastructure or anything like that, but any redoing of the road or anything like that could affect the critical root structure that you see there. As a general kind of rule of thumb, the picture down below, the analysis does indicate the canopy of the trees that are there, and generally speaking, the root structure does kind of mimic the canopy of the trees. So any road work or anything like that will likely impact the root structure, which can move a lot of different directions. And let me just also say this, I'm a planner. I am not an arborist, and so I'm using our staff who is knowledgeable about this in order to make the best recommendation we can. So, yes, that's kind of the situation that we see down there. Ultimately, any parking that is going to go in there, diagonal or otherwise, would likely impact the feasibility of keeping those trees as they stand right now. So,
Joseph, just to tag on to what you said a little bit, I just wanted to add that what that line work shows, in addition to what you've just outlined, is that even if we don't do the diagonal parking and we only make improvements to First Street to help with the drainage, we would still be impacting the critical root zones of the trees and could do severe damage to the trees if they're left. So that's kind of the main purpose of the graphic.
So, what are the next steps, kind of as we're concluding here?
Counselor Newman has a question, I think, pertaining to that particular slide.
This one, I just want to make sure I understand. So we either have parking or we have trees. Because if we do the parking, the trees will be damaged. If we don't do anything, then they're okay. But does that also include if we do drainage? Like, did I understand that right?
Mayor, through you.
Yes.
So for these trees, almost any infrastructure that we include in this area of First Street will impact the trees to some level. It does not mean that we are in any reconfiguring or redo of this south side of this park that we will not include trees. Trees are a very important part to city parks and rec, to the desirability of park infrastructure, and truly it's something that we push heavily, even in the planning department, through our design standards and landscaping requirements on individual property. We hold ourselves to that standard as well. So the design that you saw previously to the south side does include trees. It does not include, it includes some of the trees that are already there, but most of the ones that are directly adjacent to First Street are not included.
Can I just clarify something with you? So you are saying that due to the surface root structure typical of among cottonwood trees, that even resurfacing First Street is going to impact that because of the nature of the tree and where the roots lie?
Mayor, I'm not an arborist, but that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Todd's coming up to fill in.
Counselor Bowling?
Thank you, Mayor.
Todd's
Thank you,
coming
Mr. Shahidi. Just a point of clarification.
Todd was going to answer that, and then I'll go to you, then Counselor Freed, then Counselor Lockhart.
Just to provide a little clarity to the question that you'd asked, Mayor.
Thank you.
So as you think about trees, the root system is typically as large as the canopy of the tree is. So if we're talking about stormwater improvements and a road that's actually slanted the wrong direction and flowing to the east, where we need to flow it more to the west and flow it more to the south, and we drop in storm pipe that's going to be relatively deep, 6 feet, you're going to impact half the roots of those tree systems just by doing the stormwater improvements that we need to do. And I think that's the point that we're trying to make, is the curb line, the stormwater improvements, and the other pieces are going to affect these tree roots. Will it necessarily kill the trees immediately? No, but it will cause significant damage and stability issues for those trees. Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Bowling?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fieser. Thank you, Mr. Shahidi. This is just a point of clarification in the presentation here itself. And forgive me if I did miss it, but these south side trees are listed here as prune and not as remove. But from what I'm understanding of our presentation and our suggestions right now, it seems to me that in a planning, design, and implementation process, staff and arborists would prefer removal. Am I reading that correctly? And if I am, I think, especially for a public document that that people are going to look at, it might be important to make sure that there is at least an asterisk or something that clarifies that, because that's quite confusing to me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, through you, I appreciate that comment. And this analysis was done on the current conditions of the trees just as they stand, not necessarily specifically in relation to the project's impact on those. This is done kind of at the beginning of any project, looking at the.
Thank you.
But we can certainly.
Counselor Freed?
Thank you, Mayor. I did not have my hand up, so we can go to Councilor Lockhart if you're okay with that.
Okay.
Counselor Lockhart?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to all of you guys for the presentation, online also, and the time it took. So since these cottonwoods have a very not a very deep root system, what kind of trees are you considering? Are you considering maybe a spruce? Are you considering cottonwoods again, or what kind of trees are being considered for replacement?
And
We haven't, go ahead, Joseph.
yeah, so Carrie, you can feel free to jump in if you need to, but I don't think that we've specifically decided the specific species that we will replace these with. Ultimately, that is part of the actual RFQ process, determining what specifically goes in what spot, looking at what's around it, what the sunlight's doing, trying to improve species biodiversity in the area, and looking at things that just, potentially work well in park areas and ones that don't. So there's kind of going to be a lot that goes into it. We haven't gotten to that step yet.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be too early to ask, but I'm curious if there would be an opportunity to try to leave the old ones in while planting new ones, knowing that we will be shortening their lifespan or damaging them hugely. Because I think one of the things that I've heard is, because I think it's 2 trees for every tree we take down. Is that correct? We have to put in 2 trees for every tree we take down.
That's correct.
And so I'm like, that's awesome. We're going to have more trees than we had before. But people's concerns are, yeah, but they're not going to be big trees, and they're not going to provide that shade right away. So could there be the potential of kind of doing a hybrid of both? Or does that just really make a mess when you go back then, because you'll have to take them out and that damages the road? I'd just like to hear some thoughts on that.
So there's certainly so there's certainly the possibility to do that. It depends on the timeline of this project. And we hadn't quite gotten to that last slide yet. but kind of as it stands right now, this is a funded planning project and design project. This is not a funded capital improvement project. And so any whether it's a phased approach or otherwise, would be at the discretion of council, this council or others. Certainly keeping this in mind, I think that if it's the desire of council, we can certainly start doing that.
And to add on to that a little bit, we could certainly consider, a succession plan or phasing in that way. However, that would limit any improvements that could be done to First Street. And so that's what we were trying to balance here.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for your presentation. I think, it's really cool to see the designs and the amount of public participation to this point about what we want to see in this First Street area. I know there's probably a lot of folks that are going to comment on this about the trees, so I appreciate you guys taking the time, and even if a lot of these questions are focused on that. I think with the input that we might receive from the public and working maybe if the arborist is here at the next kind of conversation like this, because I think we might have a lot of questions about what can go in and the feasibility of some of this. But my background's in environment, natural resources, working in conservation for 15 years. And even some of the construction projects I've been on recently, I understand that, I could just see if we, as it stands now with these south trees, if we were to, enact this plan and leave some of these cottonwoods, my concern would be paving, putting in bike lanes, curb and gutter, sidewalks, new planting, and then we damage those tree roots really bad. And in a year or two, big storms, those come down, and now we have to tear that up or completely, the risk would be having to rework some of this infrastructure we just spent time and money on. And so that would be my concern. But, we all love trees. We all want trees. And I think I really appreciate your comment too, Mr. Shahidi, about this is the plan. We have plenty of time to implement what we want to implement, and there's processes, but really excited to hear what the public has for ideas too. So thanks.
Councilor Newman.
Is yours about trees? Because mine isn't.
Yes.
Then can I defer to him?
Yes, Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Newman, sort of, yes. And thank you, Mr. Shahidi, again. And then, like Councilor Freed said, again, thank you for reiterating, this is a planning stage, not an implementation or capital stage. There is a lot of time for people to give us public input and for us to adjust as necessary based on that feedback. I think I would just ask the question, which does not need to be answered, for city staff as we move forward with this. You're not an arborist, we're not arborists, we're not CPAs, which is why we have Director Wade give us our finance presentation. But we do need to hear from the city arborist in a work session, in a public engagement session. And I would go so far as to say that we need to hear from the city arborist and we need to hear from a third-party arborist as well, just so that we're doing that due diligence, because there are a lot of questions around what kind of trees they will be. How big can those trees be? I know they don't, the technology exists to plant larger and more mature trees, not necessarily very small and adolescent trees. And those are all questions that I think will help push this conversation forward in an engaging way. And so I would just ask, as we move forward into other work sessions, that we're able to hear not just from planning staff, and I thank you very much, but from experts in those like ecological science fields and those conservation fields, especially arborists. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newman?
I'm going to change the subject from trees, if that's okay.
I'm sure Mr. Shahidi is happy that you're doing that.
Is there data supporting the difference from pulling in parking to backing in parking? And specifically, because I think of like ADA, vans and stuff, like, so is there data supporting which one's safer?
Mayor, through you. So it is kind of the industry standard in some of these areas to kind of include those because it's easier, it's less backing movement or site obstructed backing movement. If you think about, we have one area of town that has that. That's the Ivinson Mansion. Whether it's used the correct way or not is a completely different subject, but it is. You have the backing movement that goes into the parking spot, but you have a clear line of sight when you are coming out of it, where you wouldn't have that when you were backing out otherwise. And so it does increase safety within that area, and that is partially why we suggested that for a one-way street.
Follow up?
Is there data supporting that? Was like my question though. Is there data supporting that?
That would be a traffic engineer
Okay.
from all best practices.
We were given that direction.
Yeah, and the city engineering
Councillor Freed, you have something to add on this, I think?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I know the chair of our Traffic Safety Commission is also in the audience, and so she might be willing to come up here. But yes, I serve on the Traffic Safety Commission. We had some presentations, and I think the city manager also had her hand up. But yeah, there is data to support, I think, safety of pedestrians, other motorists, and bikers. And so that bike lane that you saw in there, that when you back in, yeah, it's infinitely safer for multimodal transportation that's happening on those streets.
Thank you, Councillor Freed. City Manager, did you have anything else? Mr. Shahidi? Never. Okay. Are you finished? Did you have one more? I thought you had one more.
Yeah, it was just the next steps, really.
Oh, okay.
So we were almost at the end. So what we're doing here today is talking with you guys about the concepts and looking at it, any direction on revisions that you guys had, which we've heard some of them, inclusion in the documents, but no specifics. If you guys have that, we would appreciate the guidance on that. Then we move to the construction documents from that. That is the tangible from this project. And then we look at funding, acquisition, and implementation. That is where you guys come back in and decide if we're greenlit on this or we're voting it down. So
Okay.
we're hoping that this is a project that doesn't sit on a shelf. This effort was worth it. this is why we're out there, to make things happen and to improve areas, but there's always areas with competing interests. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, again, and ma'am. And I know this is just in the planning stages, but for the kids' play area, I didn't see any swings. Is there going to be any swings, or is this just kind of a pretty rough idea of what's available there? Because I know my kids wish there were more swings in town. They like jungle gyms, but they really like swings.
Yeah, we did include swings. If you look where the number 10 is on the upper right of the image, it's kind of up in that corner.
Is that what that is? Okay, thank you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. I looked like a teeter-totter.
It did. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and I just have a comment, if that's okay.
Yes,
Great.
questions and/or comments right now.
I realize we jumped straight to the trees, which Councilor Newman noted as well, but the design is really great. I mean, I look at this, and it's so much more inviting. It gets people traveling through the park. The accessibility is hugely improved, which we know right now. I mean, seeing some of the pictures from the rainstorm last week, you couldn't have gotten across the street in some areas. So all of those things, thank you for all of the work on that. I mean, I think it gives us a vision of what this could be. We just need to kind of now tackle this tree issue, to see if we can figure this out and think about how to ensure we're keeping that green space as we move forward. So, awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Now stepping away from the trees for a second, I do really appreciate the design, and I talked to a lot of folks at the open houses, and I think people are really excited about this project if we can find the funding and it can fit. And I agree, Mr. Shahidi, that we shouldn't keep it on a shelf if at all possible. I just had a question, and I'm sure planning did this, but I also serve on the Railroad Depot Board, and just curious about if there's been any specific asks of them of what their opinion is of the use or transforming some of this area, and if that's kind of goes in line with this survey, or if that's something now maybe we could kind of poke around and just see if they had any other ideas as folks that have been inhabiting that area for quite a while.
So as part of this project, we did do stakeholder engagement. I believe you, Assistant Manager Todd Fieser, did meet with the Railroad Board to discuss this. As part of this project, we're also in discussions with Union Pacific Railroad as well. They are a slightly more difficult body to get a hold of than the Depot Board, but they are there nonetheless. And so we are under the impression that all bodies are aware of it and was part of the process. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Sorry, one more question that I forgot about before. Actually, it's two questions, one topic. The detention pond, the way it is going to be created, will any of the water in the neighborhood that's south of it go toward that detention pond? I know we're trying to keep it from continuing to go south, but is there any opportunity to kind of work the other way?
Mayor, through you, I
Yes.
believe that the intent will be to try and capture, and we haven't done a thorough analysis of storm drain to understand what we can and can't capture. But the intent would be to capture anything that is on the east side of First Street and pull it over to the west side, get it into the detention pond, hold it at that detention pond, and then reduce the discharge from that detention pond as it heads south.
Okay.
So we would not be capturing or effectively improving any drainage to the south of Park Street, but we don't want to make it worse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my follow-up question, that's not really a follow-up question to that, but kind of is. I also had a constituent ask if that is going to be a large enough detention pond to turn it into an ice rink in the winter.
No, because it will drain out. The intent will be for it to drain out
Okay.
entirely and not
Fair
have
enough.
a standing water. Now, we could have a different discussion about how it's used in the winter, but that is
Not that, okay.
detention ponds are used.
Perfect, thank you.
Getting all those questions in. Councilor Newman?
A follow-up to yours that sparked, so on this photo, number 8 says it's open lawn, but that's where the detention pond would be? is up, right up there, yeah. Oh, is that not the number 8? Tell what it is.
No, you're correct. That's open lawn. There would be a depression there that Jake could use for stormwater detention, but when it's not being used as a detention, it would be dry, and so it could be used in that way.
Okay, now my real question, if I,
All right, go ahead, continue, please.
what funding are we going to look at for this project?
So certainly we can look beyond the city for funding at various state or state grants, but primarily I think the source would be looking at the city and how much we want to put towards these projects. But as we always do with every project, we look for every opportunity to finance it in ways other than just, whether it be through grants or otherwise, finance our capital improvement projects.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. this is a comment. I'm thinking as far as the museum goes, the train depot, I think this rendition here is a much more inviting park. That's what is there now. I think you would see more families using it, and I think it would bring more attention to the train depot, which would increase their foot traffic for the museum and whatnot. So I see that as a plus.
Thank you.
And Mayor, through you, sorry.
Yes.
I think one of the major things from this is placemaking. Creating an area that is desirable within downtown that is not just related to specifically shopping or eating or anything like that. It attracts everyone. And I think that this design does a good job of activating that space in a more complete way. Historically, what we see over there is a little bit underutilized compared to some of our other amenities within town. So a goal with any of these projects is how do we activate this fully, maximize what we're doing in an area.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and all this discussion has made me think that, this project is really solving multiple problems in one. If we can fund it and this goes underway, I mean, we're improving infrastructure, we're increasing parking, we're driving families and folks to businesses downtown, we're creating a space, we're managing safety and risks. And it really just reminds me of kind of in downtown Casper, a similar project where they have put an amphitheater and what it's done to generate revenue for their city, to have a place downtown where they can hold events and do things. And that's what this really reminds me of in certain ways is we could be doing that and also improving our roads, accessibility, parking, and driving people downtown. So I think it's a really great idea, and the designs are fantastic. Thanks.
And I just want to say that I also appreciate the design, and that's a very large piece of property that is highly underutilized and is not necessarily user-friendly. And I think this creates a lot of components that would be extremely user-friendly and desirable. And what did you call it? A space? What kind of thing?
Placemaking, yeah.
Placemaking. I like that. All right. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment, and I just thought of this, thank you for the presentation. I also love the plan. This looks amazing. Not to take us back to the trees, but I do have a comment on the trees. I'm just looking at like the approximate age, and a lot of these say 80 plus, but then that the cottonwood life expectancy is 100 to 120 years. That's like a 40-year difference there. That's pretty significant. Like I'm thinking of like just how time, goes. I became an auntie a couple months ago. In 40 years, that kid's going to be older than me, right? And so I'd love to hear from the arborist of like, what does 80 plus mean? Is that like truly 80 to 85, or are these trees like 100 or 110? So 80 plus is pretty ambiguous to me, so I just have a question about that. And I see that a lot of them are in fair shape. What exactly does that mean? I think I'd like to know a little bit more about that too. So I'll just say, great presentation, thank you so much, and this is really exciting. Thanks.
And I think, I just want to comment that the lifespan of a tree is dependent, like we humans are, on the conditions in which it lives. So 120 would be ideal conditions. And if you start contaminating and altering the conditions, then it diminishes. Okay. I think that's it for now. We will go to public comment on this agenda item. Sir, ma'am, and then the person behind you. Sir, if you can come up and state your name for the record.
Cody Pridmore. I'm a 2nd Street resident. I'm a professional geologist in the state also, and I'm here to say that we love those cottonwood trees, and if anything that can be done to save them, please do. But also to challenge an underlying assumption that there is a parking issue in downtown, and I know how this presentation was brought forward was that there was either a real or a perceived, and I would like to say that it is a perceived issue of parking down there. Me, my wife, and my 2-year-old daughter use these spaces daily, and we see the empty parking spaces daily as well throughout the year. And if anybody would like data on that, we could help in collecting imagery for that, of course. And then also with engaging with downtown business owners, most of the parking issues, which I have heard from them, is ADA or people who do not like to travel far on foot. So adding more parking in this area would not actually solve the issue. And the trees in the northern parking section with the reduced life expectancy are presumably due to the parking lot being paved over their roots. And so I do find a certain irony is that this area of Laramie is the roots, the historical roots of the town with the railroad, as well as the core of the town with the cottonwoods, which is also the state tree and a symbol of the West in Wyoming. And so let us be careful if we're looking solely to add parking that we don't erode and kill the roots and core of our own town through these supposed improvements. Additionally, there has been the collection of signatures, and we are about 500. My neighbor, Greg Nickerson, has been spearheading that and is not able to make it today. But we'd like to present that information at another time, presumably, on a future meeting on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
And if you can state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Maria. So I also want to talk about trees, obviously. I just want to say that, so I recently moved to Laramie, and when people ask me, like, why do I live in Laramie and why do I like living in Laramie, the answer is not parking lots. The answer is that, you know, this city has a character, and the city has a really good balance between, like, you know, what businesses need and what people need. And that area is really a symbol of that balance. So that's sort of the first thing. The second thing is that I was looking at the design, and I was a little surprised about how the issue of trees seemed sort of like an add-on. So we're not sort of taking into account the fact that the trees are there. We're just saying, okay, we're going to develop the area, sort of tear down the trees, and then we'll figure out what we're going to plant. So I think that approach is one approach. It's not the only approach that's possible. And, you know, I think there's definitely room there to perhaps plan this a little differently. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I have, good evening, and if you could state your name for the record. Good evening to both of you.
Thank you. My name is Marissa Pridmore. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. We live on 2nd Street, and almost daily we walk from the 700 block all the way through the business district, either on 2nd or Front Street. And the primary issue we see, because we also make this walk in the evenings, and with all due respect to the police officers in the room, We primarily see enforcement of existing traffic safety and parking laws after 10 p.m. It would be nice to see some enforcement at 10 in the morning. And I believe that a lot of the perceived parking issues would go away if there was enforcement of parking limits. And then to continue a little bit what Maria was saying, Laramie is special, and part of the reason it's special is because it's not just a continuation of the Colorado Front Range. The trees are a big part of making that special. And as the state tree of Wyoming, the cottonwoods especially are special. And so we ask that as you guys move forward, you consider that and leave the trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment? Yes, Nancy, if you'll come up and state your full name for the record.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Nancy Sindelar. I also live on 2nd Street. First 2 points of fact. Spring Creek used to flow down Steel Street. All the old maps showed, I have a friend with a photograph of her house with the Spring Creek running right through there. The water is going to flow that way. It still flows under the ground. So whatever you're planning on doing with drainage and retention, take that into consideration. Yeah, I've even done archaeology digs when they put in a gas line in my alley. The back and diagonal parking, this refers to the Traffic Commission. There's a love-hate relationship from the input I've gotten from the public with that. They either love it or they hate it. And I think some of the hate is trying to adapt to new things, but some of it is just, it's really hard to turn my neck that much when I'm backing in to these places. So hopefully you'll start my timing now. Okay, I was looking at some of the earlier slides in the presentation here, and they took their plan picture and overlaid it over what's already there, and the parking lot is less than a third full. Living on 2nd Street, I can look at my car and say, that car belongs to that house, that car belongs to that house. Nobody comes down and parks on 2nd Street in the 700 block or the 800 block that is going downtown. One time, we had one person that I think worked at Public Health, but that was only because they couldn't find a place closer. But parking in that part of the woods is not that critical. I look at the photographs we take. We always climb up, the city climbs up on the top of the pedestrian viaduct, the Garfield Street Bridge, and takes pictures towards the train depot, and what do you see? You see all these beautiful trees, and now we're going to cut them all down. Parking isn't the problem, because I've got pictures here on my phone I can show anybody who wants to look at them. It's a third full, and all the cars are parked under the trees. I don't think adding a whole lot more parking is really that important. I think that having public space and play space and trees and grass is what's really going to help us the most. Let's see. Okay, I think I got that. Okay. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Nancy. Further public comment? Yes, if you'll come to the podium, please, and state your name for the record. Welcome.
My name is Megan Meyer. I'm also a resident of 2nd Street. I'm super nervous. I'm sorry.
Well, we're happy to have you here, Megan.
I was wondering if you would be able to, oh, I'm so sorry.
I apologize.
I also don't really think parking is the biggest priority downtown. And I'm curious if by continuing the parallel parking on the south end of the depot, you would be able to move the damage further out, thereby affecting the tree roots less. So I think that'd be a great question for an arborist. 2nd Street is a huge wide street and could potentially have diagonal parking on it. Like, I would rather see diagonal parking in front of my house than have the trees get damaged. But I also see a lot of I think parallel parking down there in the shade is really important for people with horse trailers or campers. Like, you see a lot of people coming to visit downtown during rodeo season, and they're using that parallel parking as a way to have a trailer, right? And I think making all of that space diagonal, you're kind of excluding those folks from appreciating downtown. So, again, I'm really sorry. I'm so nervous and weird in front of
It's okay, Megan.
But thank you very much.
You did good.
Good work.
Thank you. Further public comment? Yes.
We have a hand raised online.
Okay.
From Evan.
From
Evan.
Evan. Evan, can you please turn your camera on? Are you there?
Hear me? Yeah,
There you
sorry.
are. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Evan Eganoff. I'm a resident of the West Side on Pine Street. I'd just like to mirror everybody else's comments on, saving trees. They take a long time to grow, and like other people have said, they're going to outlast a lot of us. I'd also like to mirror the comments on keeping Laramie historic and as it is. I think a lot of people like to live here because, it's not the Front Range, and we have a lot of historic character. I also have to question the intention of this parking situation to increase parking for the Coal Creek stencil development. I know we shot that down last year, but I heard it's coming back up. So I'd just like the council to think of our concerns and keeping Laramie as it is and preserving trees. Thanks.
Thank you, Evan. Any further public comment on this agenda item? Yes.
Mayor, you have Diana Seebeck online.
All righty. Good evening, Ms. Seebeck. If you can turn your camera on, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Okay.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Diana Seebeck. Takes a moment to get all the wait for the permissions and all. So Councilor Newman asked about funding, but my question is, what's the projected cost of this project? That's all I have, a question.
This project at this current time is in the very first stages of development. And so no final decision has been made on what the project would be, but Assistant City Manager Fieser is going to address your question, Ms. Seebeck.
Honorable Mayor, through you to council. You're exactly right. We haven't got through cost estimating, but when you're talking stormwater, surface water drainage, utilities, and you're talking full street reconstruction plus park plus anything else that we're doing, it's a very expensive project, probably a little bit north of $6 million. And that's just back of the napkin type figures. We have done no cost estimating at this point.
Mr. Fieser, if I can clarify, so what you're talking about is not necessarily the park structure, but just the basic infrastructure that is needed for proper drainage and to upgrade the standard on the streets and the asphalt, then?
Honorable Mayor, through you, absolutely. To keep in mind, you have that storm sewer pipe that was shown as a drawing that's going to take stuff to the west and to the south. There's no storm sewer there now. There's no storm sewer in First Street beyond Garfield, maybe, if I remember correctly. And so that's all brand-new infrastructure that's going to have to be paid for and be input before it goes. And we all know that the cost of the infrastructure is high. We just recently did stormwater in Wyoming Avenue, right, to the tune of a little bit north of $2 million. And you think about a similar-sized project that might bring that same amount of stormwater cost to that. And then you add another road and sidewalk, curb and gutter on both sides of the road when you're rebuilding a road that was originally built as an alleyway, right? It was originally conceived as an alleyway. You can see that in the plans. A narrow frontage for the depot. You're doing some major improvements to the base, the gravel, everything that supports that. And that comes, again, if we just compare it to what Wyoming Avenue was just recently in their road award that they've just recently been doing on. You know, we're easily at that with maybe another $1 million into park improvements as we move forward. So
thank you.
You're talking just north of $6 million.
Thank you. And so, Ms. Beck, you just got a guess at the infrastructure that's needed down there. And the rest, it's still in the public process of determining the extent of the project. Thank you for your question. Is there any other public comment? Yes. Mr. Henderson.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. During the presentation, an increase of parking was mentioned, though no specificity as to the number of spaces that it would be increased.
I think it was. It was.
I missed that.
Sorry.
If that
23.
is there, thank you. I'm taken back to a May 7th, 2024 City Council meeting on or about that date, where a representative from Stencil Group mentioned feeling like the project that they were looking at in Landmark Square was going to be slowed, but it was a done deal, and that was their impression conveyed at that time. That was very upsetting to a lot of people. I was excited to hear tonight the effect of Second Street residents. They don't feel that parking is there. I love that they've witnessed that they're attesting to the availability of parking. That compared with the increase of spaces as alleged and reported in the report, I look forward to looking at that more closely. What is council's present priority when we have Colorado Street and we have streets that could use this type of development that have been put off for many, many years, paving and doing curb and gutter? How is that prioritized as opposed to this area where residents very close to the affected area do not claim the problem? Thanks.
Mayor, I misspoke, it's 35.
Oh.
35.
Councilor Newman corrected his parking spaces to 35. And, okay. Any further public comment? All right. Yes. If you'll please state your name for the record. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. My name is Angela, and I just wanted to, I guess, ask a few clarifying questions. So the project mentioned, well, first I wanted to ask, is this drainage issue, is it tied to parking spots? Because it seemed like this project tries to pursue different goals. Parking lots seem not to be as a pressing issue as drainage, for example. So is it possible to sort of disentangle these two projects and potentially evaluate the impact of one of those, which would probably be drainage, as it's more pressing? And In terms of the project itself, I think there's not enough clarity what trees exactly, how many trees exactly need to be cut down, if they absolutely have to be cut down, what trees will be planted instead, how many, where, what type of trees, how big they're going to be. So I think for the public to evaluate the validity of the project going forward, I think these questions are also very important to address. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I return to council if there's any final comment. The only thing I want to say to the last commenter is that anytime we look at an area project, you have to look at it holistically so that, as I think one person talked about, you don't, everything comes in an order. So if you're going to do stormwater and road and reconstruction of a park, then it all has to be done in the proper sequence so that you're not going back and tearing up a new road that you just put in because now you need to address stormwater. So you start in at the very basic and you have to build out from that. So this is not a project about parking, but rather is a project about urban renewal and looking at the entire space and what it offers to the community. Councilor Lockhart, you had a comment?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification too. You know, during the meeting with Stencil, several business owners from downtown spoke because it would take up parking. The residents that would live there would not have enough parking in that lot, so they'd park elsewhere. And a huge concern that we've here to this day from downtown business owners is there is not enough parking. So one of the things of this project is to gain extra parking on the outliers. So, and I do appreciate everybody that spoke. We want everybody's opinions, but when you go, if you went and just talked to business owners, they're going to tell you there's not enough parking downtown. So what's this trying to do is you can't create more land downtown with trying to find different solutions with what we have to increase more parking so people, and then with a nice park, maybe they'd want to park there too. So just some ideas to keep in mind that I'm trying to keep in mind. Thank you.
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, and I think we're at the very early stages of this project, and I think there's some really good designs that we're building off of. But yeah, it's kind of been mentioned, you know, we're not adding a parking lot, we'd be upgrading a parking lot. Providing stormwater drainage in that parking lot benefits an already existing parking lot. You know, and that's not in the designs that take out that parking lot. I do think that, you know, we've heard from the public and members on 2nd Street that say that parking isn't that big of an issue there, which is great to hear. I don't think any of those people on 2nd Street spoke about if there's no lack of flooding or stormwater drainage that needs to be there. So that seems like critical infrastructure. Providing bike lanes and a paved road that's better, I think is important. And also, I think we've heard from the public that we need to engage our city arborist, I think, at these meetings and really get some information about the trees, why they would have to come out, provide more context to the public that way, and then talk about what, if we were to adopt one of these plans, if Plan B is the favored by the community and something we were to go with, whether we amend or augment that with different things, I think we need to have that engagement with the arborist and the ecological considerations being on the forefront of those conversations moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to everyone who made public comment for us today. Moving away from parking, which I have my own opinions on because I've never had a problem. But I think one of the things that we haven't discussed, which I think is something else that needs to be a consideration inside of this larger public discussion, is the idea of public safety and tree health. And if we have already deteriorating conditions, you know, what does a situation look like where there's a farmer market and we have a crazy wind event, which is not out of the realm of possibility for this place, and a limb comes down and there's injuries or there's fatalities. Like, those are other factors that need to be considered inside the larger process of urban development and redesign and beautification. That said, this is a tough issue because no amount of public safety information or science or anything like that is in any way relevant or rational when people see big trees get cut down. All of that can go immediately out the window. And if I wasn't on this dais, I would probably be one of the commenters, right? But because I am, I have to understand that, like, the perception that we love our big, beautiful trees is a place that inside of this ongoing process we need to respect and also to start from in order to find an avenue of compromise. But I think my larger point is this, and I'll end with this, and sorry for belaboring, but this is the early stages of a project. So to see so many people impassioned by it and engaged by it and willing to show up or sign a petition and participate in this process at this early stage is exactly what we've been trying to achieve. And so I just want to commend every single person that has made their voices known, either here in public comment, online, in email, text message, call, just because this is exactly the way the process is supposed to play out. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, and I also want to thank all of those who showed up and spoke tonight. You are speaking at the earliest stage of a project, and it has impact and meaning and provides thoughtful direction, so thank you. We have one more work project, so I am going to, and I have counselors that need a 5-minute break. So, yes, we will return at 7 minutes after, 2 minutes after.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. call to order. We've got the counselors back. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and start our last work session, a presentation of the progress of the 3rd Street beautification project by the City of Laramie with BHA Design Incorporated. And Assistant City Manager Fieser, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First off, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the team we're working with tonight. First off, I want to thank Derek Taney, who's been the Assistant Project Manager on this, and then Doug Elgar from BHA Designs here tonight. Been a lot of fun. I want to remind everybody the scope of this project was to basically look at beautification on 3rd Street between Sheridan and Clark Street. And beautification, when we're talking about that, it basically happens between the curb and gutter and the buildings, which is a very small area to really focus on and do some beautification stuff. What Doug's going to go through with you tonight is what we did through the outreach process, similar to what we did with 1st Street, what some of the things are, and then some creative ideas that they came up with when we found some idea for some opportunity zones. So I don't think I need to take too much of Doug's presentation, but just want to give him a quick introduction and then get out of the way and let him give the presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions when you're done.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Doug.
Thanks so much. Again, as Todd said, my name is Doug Elgar. I work for BHA Design. We're landscape architects and urban designers in Fort Collins, and it is a delight to be here to present our concepts tonight. Oh, I get the clicker. That's super fun. As Todd said, our scope of work is on 3rd Street between Clark and Sheridan. It's a total of 8 blocks between the curb and the property line and the building face. And in fact, probably more often than not, the cases involve areas of private property, but we'll get into that a little bit too. It's easy to understand why 3rd Street and its image and aesthetics are so important. For many visitors new to Laramie, it is the very first impression they have. And the balance between a need for an efficient and functional state highway and thoroughfare and being a part of the downtown cultural and economic fabric can be a challenging thing. To give a little synopsis of our work to date, we began our process of discovery in March and held 2 open house style public and stakeholder meetings in April and May. In the background, we've been generating and developing concepts I'll be sharing shortly. As this project moves forward, we'll continue to hold an outreach and stakeholder engagement dimension to this and developing construction documents this fall and winter and apply for permits and bids in early spring and hopefully have some of these projects underway by summer. We developed a list of outcomes we knew were going to be critical to the success of this project. First, it is our experience. Projects are only made better when they are community-driven, and the outreach thus far has given us lots of very useful insight into what is desired and needed of this corridor. Encouraging commerce by way of aesthetic improvement is a time-tested tool for designers and planners everywhere. Providing interesting and meaningful design elements to give the user a sense of arrival to the downtown area. Improvements like these often encourage private property owners to make changes, as the idea of improvements beget improvements. The creation of design that is clearly a reflection of the community and its identities and values. Providing some consistency and continuity along the length of the corridor. And last, we understand that construction has been sort of ever present on 3rd Street for some time now, and it is our expectation that these improvements avoid kind of continued inconveniences and avoid to the greatest extent possible closing lanes of traffic or accesses to businesses. As I mentioned, we held 2 outreach events in April and May from 11 to 1 in the morning and again from 5 to 7 in the evening with individual stakeholder meetings in the afternoons. These meetings were announced by mailers and set to the required distance of the project area, and social media was also utilized. There we go. Both events were well attended and received lots of very useful feedback from the community. Additionally, we met with specific stakeholders like YDOT, LPAC, the Beautification Committee, Visit Wyoming, Laramie Main Street Alliance, and more. We've held a few meetings with private property owners as well. Some of the challenges with this corridor stem from the fact that this is wide-out right-of-way, which places some limitations on what improvements can actually be made. While maintaining 4 lanes of through traffic, this corridor could potentially be considered to be relatively narrow to that end. We've identified some opportunities on private property we believe will contribute to its aesthetic appeal, like screening some parking, for instance, finding some opportunities to provide vegetation to soften the corridor, supporting the continued success of the Main Street Alliance's facade grant program, and as we know, architecture being an important component to the downtown image, and building on the ongoing street furnishings program, paying particular attention to street lights, litter receptacles, benches, and things of that like. We're very excited about the Public Art Coalition selection for the artists Laura Haddad and Tom Drugan. It's worth pointing out that as a part of this effort continues to develop, we will work closely with Laura and Tom to find interesting ways to relate our design, enhance their work, and encourage continuity along these 8 blocks. Laura and Tom have been selected to develop a gateway-like feature that we believe will end up on the corners of Clark and Sheridan, kind of where you can see these yellow triangles. Our scope is to enhance these corners and provide a nice home for the art. Our first focus area was the Montessori school frontage between Sheridan and Kearney. This block currently contains the schoolyard with a 5-foot-tall screened chain link fence. The plans we'll use to approach their approval body will propose a 7 to 10 feet deep easement with larger blocks on the corners for the art and other improvements. The first concept replaces the chain link fence with sections of more appealing metal picketing fence with intermittent breeze block walls. A platform and series of other street furnishings will support the gateway art at the corners of Sheridan. And this may be obvious, but the gateway feature is a placeholder until Tom and Laura come up with something much better. We've chosen breeze block as material in this particular concept as it relates to the architecture of the building itself, which contains these kind of cool ornate details. This design is supported by added vegetation, again, finding opportunities anywhere we can to locate some, climate-appropriate trees and shrubs to soften the corridor a bit. Also, as a general rule for the entirety of the corridor and these improvements, finding materials and plant selections that, will hold up to corrosion, road salts, freeze-thaw cycles, and things like that. Another concept we developed features metal panels, which we may find some fun ways for the kids to interact with. The school, obviously, too, may have some thoughts on the level of transparency of and visibility of the play yard behind it, but I think these are things that we can work through with the owner if and when we have those conversations with them. Moving a block north, we studied the Enterprise rental lot as sort of a template for other parking areas along 3rd Street. The existing lot obviously contains a lot of asphalt, cars right up onto the right-of-way, with only wheel stops as a barrier to the sidewalk. Our proposal would minimally impact the functionality of the lot itself, possibly not even losing a single parking spot, where they can, to consider that important criteria. We'd suggest a 5 to 7 foot easement with larger blocks at the north and south end for additional screening and vegetation. This first concept we prepared uses that 5 to 7 foot easement for some additional vegetation and a shorter screening fence. In the interest of protecting and promoting commerce, we of course work with the owner to ensure this is something that they'd actually want. For instance, maybe they would be concerned with the height of the fence and the visibility of their vehicles. Again, another detail that I'm sure we can work with the owner to provide some a detail that everyone is happy with. Another concept with a slightly higher fence and some colorful panels. I think one thing we heard from several people at our open houses was a desire for more color along the corridor. It's our expectation that opportunities like these colorful panels could relate to the art and start establishing a kind of a rhythm and a theme you might experience all 8 blocks of the corridor itself. We've identified the Daylight Donuts on the corner of University to be another unique opportunity to provide enhancements. Their current lot is a lot more concrete than is sort of functionally needed for the parking lot. The plan we would recommend would retain the two existing business accesses off of 3rd and University. We would propose a 20 to 20 foot wide and 40 to 50 foot long easement for the improvements. This concept parts a small community dining area with a low brick wall from the roadways. We might even suggest some additional panels to further mitigate the noise of the road. A small metal trellis structure is buffered by planting curbs between the spaces of the parking lot. And we've had some early conversations with the owner that has suggested an interest in improvements like these. The travel in is another opportunity we've identified on the southwest corner of Clark, particularly this walled area immediately adjacent to the corner. We held an individual stakeholder meeting with the owner who expressed their dissatisfaction with its current state. While earlier concepts we shared with them didn't quite capture their interest, we've made some developments we believe more accurately reflect their expectations. We're proposing an easement that occupies approximately half of the existing structure. Again, no changes to access or parking. This concept separates this space into a section dedicated to private use for the travel-in visitors and a public space on the roadway side. The public side would see some additional planting areas, hoping to save a couple of existing trees in this area, and a space for the gateway art feature itself on the corner. These spaces would be buffered by both landscape and some breeze block walls that relate to the kind of mid-century style architecture of the building. Travel-in has requested a dog run space and a patio for their visitors. I wanted to carve out a minute for what is unmistakably the most prominent thing that affects the character and quality of the downtown area, its architecture. It's possible to consider a portion of this money could be allocated to identify some opportunities to improve building facades. By way of example, the Laramie Main Street Alliance Facade Grant Program has seen a host of successes, either preserving existing historic architecture or returning a once renovated building to its original historic appearance. We even took a little time to research and recreate an approximation of the original appearance of the Connor building on Grand. Unfortunately, some very interesting architectural components have been lost to us over time, such as these arched windows on Grand itself, and these really cool, fantastic entry features with the ornate corbels supporting it. They look like they might have been marble originally. We've modernized the first floor glazing and awnings to some extent, but it really enhances the character and quality of this corner. We did some studies on the intersection corner bulb outs, having recently been completed by the Whiteout roadway construction effort. Introducing some interesting urban design features can provide some visual interest and some seating in areas that might utilize that. An option we've suggested would be to sandblast and stain the new concrete with some interesting patterns. To be sure, this application can be made to the recently installed concrete and does not need to be removed or reinstalled in any ways. This application does not affect performance or accessibility. Another quick concept for some pavement markings and seating on this corner. We selected this corner in particular as a study on Grand, probably being the major intersection in these 8 blocks, reinforcing the attention that's already been paid recently by constructing the colored concrete crosswalks and the larger bulb outs. The ongoing street furnishings program is another feature of the corridor that makes a big impact, replacing worn out or undesired equipment cleans things up quite a bit. Even these seemingly little things add up and improve the overall aesthetics. Lighting is another really useful tool that makes you feel like you're entering a downtown space. I know the Beautification Committee has sought some funding for lighting programs. In addition to streetlights, eave or like building sconces increases comfort levels at night. It might even be worth investigating a kind of cool projector on a building face that could display murals and have seasonal lighting, some idea like that. We've also been tasked with prescribing some costs associated with these improvements. The current funding doesn't cover all of these opportunities, but as I mentioned earlier, enhancements like these tend to inspire private interest in improvements by way of example. The Montessori block, we're estimating between 330 and 400,000. The enterprise block, 160 to 200,000. Daylight Donuts corner, 110 to 135. The Traveling corner, 200 to 245,000. Third and Grand, 160 to 200,000. That would include all four corners of Grand, and that could potentially be applied to other corners along the corridor as well. And then we included a sort of a bucket for improvements that fall into the categories of street furnishings or lightings or other minor improvement opportunities that might help establish that kind of continuity we talked about. These costs are relatively high level, and there are a number of expenditures like irrigation tap sizes and utility locates and other things that would require a deeper level of investigation. But we've also built in a pretty good contingency to these, so we feel pretty good about these numbers. I'd like to end by saying, earnestly, downtown Laramie is a really charming area. It's got a lot of character, a really colorful history. The continued support of programs like these will help keep it that way and encourage visitors, both frequent and not residents and non-residents, to stop and explore. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Councilors, questions? Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Doug. If I could add, make no bones about it, that what YDOT's doing will be beautification in our downtown, right? It'll look better when we get there, from the change that they did with the black traffic signals to us. You guys have already approved the black pedestrian lighting that's going to be put down that corridor. We used some of the money to replace the garbage cans and some of the benches. Those old planters, Parks is already slated to remove those. They're going to be going away. If they're not used, we're going to get stuff out of the corridor and really just clean up the corridor as we move through. This has been a really fun project. Derek and I have already started the conversations with Travel Inn, Daylight Donuts, and Montessori on potential easements or leases of the property to be able to do those expansions, bring in some softening and do some beautification. Another thing that staff's done is we've made some applications to Wyoming Intertie for a grant, and then LMSA did apply to T-Mobile for a grant. LMSA to try to support these projects, and those might add another $100,000 to the project as we move through. I will tell you all openly that I have been working with the owner of the Shocktoberfest on a potential lease and beautification area that may be coming to in front of council here in the near future, but it's a slow process, one that we're handling very gingerly, but that is top of mind when we're talking about beautification on 3rd Street. So with that, we'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Newman.
Assistant City Manager, will you talk about the meeting that you had with myself and WyoTech?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We were recently approached by WyoTech through Councilor Newman with their welding program and the potential that WyoTech may be interested in fabricating some of the fencing and some of the steel products and potentially even building the garbage cans. And then Brandon committed a $2 million investment from WyoTech at the same time. So we're kind of right there right now. But there is some fire and some discussion from WyoTech about having some involvement in some of the fabrication of the metal products through their up-and-coming welding program that's going to continue to grow through J.D. Mathis and their work at WyoTech, which would be very valuable to the project with really very little recognition, maybe a little plaque that says donated by WyoTech on there, which is no problem as long as we get some stuff done, right? So that's really beneficial, and it's really been a fun project. Not a lot of a lot of people have a lot of different ideas. I know a lot of you received an email about folks that, they point to the archway in Golden. And one of the things that I'm a proponent of that wasn't included is over the street banners that can change and provide information about what's happening. I was recently through Craig, Colorado, which has a 4-lane highway right through it. And they actually have a banner that you can change without going over the highway. And so I'm waiting for the specs to come from Craig on how to do something like that. But we're certainly pulling out all the stops and trying to pull together, make it a cohesive corridor that, again, like Doug had said, it creates economic vitality, placemaking, gathering, and just by the renderings, look how many pedestrians are down there on 3rd Street already. And if we can get those done, it will really add to the vibrancy of 3rd Street and hopefully build and grow what Trey and Laramie Main Street Alliance has already accomplished in the downtown, which is great work.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the campus community partnership potential. I love that. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen. I went to the first open house, and I talked to Mr. Feeser quite a bit about it, and I was really excited. Now, this goes from Clark to Sheridan. If we get this done, is there any talk about maybe even going from Sheridan all the way down to South 3rd Street, and then maybe Clark all the way north? Because as we both know, those two entry points, pretty run down. And to get people to want to go even further into town, it'd be sure nice to be able to give them another reason versus looking at some junk on a corner or a beat-up hotel or what have you. So is there any thought process in the future about that?
You know, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Lockhart, this project was envisioned and came out of the reduction of the islands that were part of the 321 Main Street for the downtown corridor. And so this project is focused solely in the historic downtown corridor. When you talk about those other two areas, I think we've got some big opportunities that are brewing for improvement in those areas. You know, we recently had the Maverick, and our hope was that that would spur more development, but with the constant construction, I think it's hard to get that going. I might have even heard that a human being was going to go on South 3rd and beautify that, but we'll see what we've got coming in the future. No, but you know, as development occurs, like, I'm being funny tonight, that's good. But as you think about as development occurs, and you might look at a Maverick gas station, say it's just a gas station. But really, as the intent was, we were hoping that there was a hotel coming on short order just right across the street. And what that does, when you see that development, as Doug had indicated earlier, is you see it start to beget more development, and that happens on the south side. Then you think about the north side with the soup kitchen acquiring the Thunderbird Motel and the potential improvements that could come with that beautification, which has already started to clean itself up, whether it's the bowling alley or ARC or Laramie Cheyenne Housing Authority, the Dairy Queen. Those all environments can all start to clean themselves and do some stuff, but it will take funding and time to get that cohesiveness all the way through that corridor.
Thank you. Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Doug, thank you for the presentation and getting to meet you at the open house. I'm really excited for this and for Assistant City Manager and all the work that the city is, I'm sure, thought of for a long time for this. And, you know, my only question is, it's just about easements, and I don't know the process, so I don't know if you'd be willing to speak to that a little bit about what it would take, you know, and for these entities to enter into that and what that looks like. Is that a huge burden, or is that, you know, based on the conversations and the community outreach you've already done, it sounds like a lot of these conversations have happened, but if that's a pretty significant hurdle to overcome, is this realistic? Or, you know, and with that, if you get easements, is there a financial benefit that these people get into with an easement? That's my big question.
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Freed, you're actually going to see two easements. They're on the consent agenda for the next council meeting to provide for Spring Creek Trail Phase 2. So easements are a legal document where the decision is it a temporary easement, a perpetual easement? Is it an easement that has a closeout clause or a certain amount of time? But when you do easements, what you do is you have a valuation of what the property's worth and a square footage price, and you basically purchase the use of that without taking ownership, knowing that the improvement you're going to do is actually increase the value of that property as it moves through. So there is a financial commitment to the people that are losing to the properties that may be giving up property for use for that public right. So there is a financial payment for that type of thing, and some of these could be significant, but there's also a gain to the businesses to have the improvements. One of the ones, you know, the Montessori School envisioning is interesting because they had recently had a grant from the Laramie Beautification Committee that had been turned back because I don't believe it was enough money maybe at that time. to really get the fencing done, and they couldn't get final decisions. Well, by us working with them, one of the considerations they get is they get that fencing improvement along with the purchase of the property, which is important to St. Lawrence O'Toole Church at this point. So they're interesting legal processes that you work through very gingerly and slowly to try to make sure that it's a cohesive and enjoyable process for everybody involved.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. This question may be a little bit in the weeds, but I had someone ask me, because those center islands, went out of the plan a few years ago, at that time, they thought they remembered a crosswalk at Sheridan and maybe a crosswalk at Clark. Is that still in the plan, or is that no longer?
Honorable Mayor, through you, not part of the scope of this project, right? This project was really about beautification. Although we did hear some things that were interesting, and I'm happy to talk about those, is the potential, they would like evaluated a light and signalized crossing at Sheridan. But WYDOT has to study that. It has to come with traffic data to see if it's even feasible to put in there. And then to let you know, the cost of a traffic signal at that point, I'm sure it's got to be roughly around $400,000 at this point to put in a traffic signal, which I don't believe would be on WYDOT's radar to do. At Clark, the other thing, another thing that's evaluated, Clark lost all of its traffic count because the Clark Street overpass left, right? And so there was no need or no traffic requirement to have the lights there. So those are very difficult. One of the things that Doug pointed out is, although we have a 4-lane highway with a turning lane for part of the way through our downtown, it's still a very narrow and tight corridor. It doesn't even really qualify for itself to have refuge islands. And was just down at 3rd and Grand the other day walking across there, and it's not a difficult walk to get across. It's just a matter of how you time it and how you get there.
Further questions, comments? Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Feaser, I'm encouraged with your comment about Shocktoberfest. It's been a decade, and we keep thinking next year, next year, next year. Even if we get all these other improvements done, we still have that wart, that blight, that's right in the middle of all this beautification. Is there any timeline that we can be comfortable about that we're going to make some progress there? Because that certainly is the most unattractive place that there is in the entire downtown.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councillor Shumway. I will tell you right now that I have a proposed lease in front of the owner. He's told me that he's going to review it in the next day or so, but I will tell you that sometimes that time frame flies or slides by. I can't tell you the time that we're doing it, but I will tell you that I'm handling it with the best kid gloves that I can to make sure that the process comes through and that it's something that is valuable to this community and that this community could actually see as a sense of joy or pride or a place to use in a public space as we move forward. So,
thank you. Further comment, question? Thank you very much. And now I'd like to go to the public for any comments on this agenda item. Thank you, Ms. Sherwood. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I forgot my pom-poms. I just wanted to say how excited I am about this project and the collaboration that has occurred, knowing that this is something our community has been working on for 30-plus years. So just very, very appreciative of the passion and dedication the city staff have shown this and really pushed it beyond even what I think was initially envisioned. So I'm just here to say, go team. And thank you. And we are here as a partner, through the last installation of public art.
Thank you, Trey. Any other further comment? And I would like to thank Margaret Brown, Chair of the Laramie Beautification Committee, for attending tonight. We appreciate that, Margaret. So, this completes our work session. Are there any final comments that you'd like to make? thank you so much for the presentations and the time that staff have put into this. It's been very informative and a lot of exciting early projects going on, and look forward to the progress. Next, city councilors, updates. Who's ready to start? Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I attended the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting on August 7th for Councilmember O'Doherty, who could not attend. It was really fascinating. It's held here. I got to sit out in the chairs. It was really nice to watch other people be up here. And the biggest outcome, they've done a lot. I think they've sent out a lot of surveys, but they're going to send a recommendation letter to council. I think that will be submitted at some point soon. That will just have recommendations about improving access to recycling services, enhancing public education and communication, reducing cost barriers, and supporting evidence-based waste diversion. So I think we'll see a recommendation letter coming from the EAC soon. Other than that, I have no other updates except some meetings at the Parks Trees and Rec Board meeting got canceled. The Railroad Depot Board meeting this week is moved to next week. And I will be attending the Traffic Safety Commission on Thursday, as well as the Ranch Advisory Commission on Thursday. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing, Mayor Cumbie and I interviewed 3 candidates for the Albany County Tourism Board, the last position available, so that was really nice. That we had to do it about a month ago for another open position. There was just one candidate. And this one was a little harder because there was 3 good candidates, but I think we made the right decision. And then I attended the Planning Commission meeting yesterday, and that's always interesting. They had 2 topics. They moved pretty quick. One of them was really interesting because a business that was grandfathered in for that also qualifies now for residential. The gentleman wanted to build apartment inside of it, and it was approved, which was great, but also because the business was grandfathered in, if they ever just tried to change that back to business, you can't. It can only be that residence in there now because of the way that it was set up. So I learned something there. Another one was on the west side. There's a lot that needed a setback from 5 foot from the code to 1 foot. Unfortunately, those lots are really narrow over there, trying to build, 2 homes and whatnot, and they did not pass that because of the setback, which is unfortunate because there would have been some smaller homes to help starter homes. But also I understand trying to we didn't see the design of the house, so you didn't know if it was going to keep with what was over there because it's an historic area. But also we need starter homes for people. So I was disappointed to see that it wasn't passed. But I learned some more information, so it's just always good to bring more information my way for me to learn.
Thank you. Councilor Newman?
I brought my wrong notebook, so I'm going to try to read. I don't have any boards I had to buy a new one, so. No board commission updates. The Vice Mayor and I went to a pretty cool groundbreaking ceremony in West Laramie for a new business that's going to pop up over there. Yeah, right. But the outpour of the thanks for the economic development on the west side and West Laramie was kind of cool to see, and talking to some of the community members about how they would like to see more of that. So that's all.
Very good. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I attended the ribbon cutting at Rotary Park. It was a great event, and that park is super. I don't know if you all have been there. I had been there when they first did the groundbreaking, and then I hadn't driven by there again. It was wonderful. So a great turnout of Rotarians, and very windy but nice day. We also had our WAM planning meeting with a few of us, and starting to make some, I say we had our WAM planning meeting, really the city staff is doing all the work behind it, and we're cheering and providing a few details. Pilot Hill had a recent meeting, a little bit business as usual, no big updates there. And then the Beautification Committee met as well, and they are working on getting funding, and it's a joint effort for finding the funding to put string lights in downtown along 3rd Street, and have gotten, and then Main Street is helping kind of go business to business to see if people are interested in that. So the funding would cover the lighting, and the business owners would just have to cover the electricity for it. So it sounds like there's been really good progress on that front, and would do a lot to add to downtown. The last thing is that I was able to talk, and a few other council members were too. I think Sharon and no, my brother's calling, sorry. And Brandon were also, had a conversation with the Wyoming Business Council to talk about code. And I spoke with Eric, I think it was Protzen, and I would love to have him come in and talk about some findings that they have of things, additional things we could be doing to encourage housing here in Laramie, or at least explore a few ideas that they had. Some may fit our needs and some may not, but I would be interested in that.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. No updates at this time.
Thank you. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. On this past Friday, Councilor Freed, Vice Mayor, and also Mayor Cumby joined me for tabling at the farmers market, and that was a lot of fun. Hot tip, don't forget your chair. My feet were sore all weekend, but that's fine.
Yes.
I stood the whole time. It was great. But no, in all seriousness, we had some really great conversations with community members. We were just kind of coming off the stormwater drainage meeting, and so lots of feedback about that, and also got to get my weekly shopping in as well. And then I guess for this week, I have LCCC Advisory Council on Thursday, and we are looking at getting a Human Rights and Relations Commission meeting on the books. Technically, our next meeting isn't until October, but there's been some interest from the members to kind of get going ahead of that. So looking forward to seeing what's next.
Good, thank you. Councilor Shumway.
Updates.
Thank you. I also had a meeting with Kaylee Hollyfield and Eric, and it was a very interesting discussion about code and about just opportunities with WBC. And I also thought that it would make a good work session, and they would be willing, without cost to us, to bring Eric in. So maybe that's something we can put a few more details together and talk to city management about that. On July 30th, we had the quarterly meeting with President Seidel, the city manager, Councilor Vigil, and I attended that, along with individuals who represent the university. And it was rather a robust conversation, looking at opportunities for partnership and talking about some of the real nitty-gritty issues related around partnership and lack thereof, about increasing better communication. So it was a good meeting, and President Seidel has been very open to these meetings and open to constructive dialogue. August 1, we celebrated the Laramie Fire Department 150th anniversary celebration, and it was so fun, and they had a great luncheon in celebration of that, and we were able to see the ceremony that reenacted when they would have to push the pump rigs into the house because they were carried by horses, and the firemen pushed the brand new fire truck into the fire station, and to great applause by the crowd. It was very well attended. And then August 5th, we came together for the retirement ceremony of Commander Kevin Lamb, and congratulations to him. Many heartwarming and funny stories. August 5th, we had Finance Committee, and it was probably one of the easiest that I've attended. There were very little questions about that, and Director Wade continues to guide us through it. On August 8th, we did this the tabling, and Councilor Vigil, I don't know that it would have been relevant for us to have chairs because there were so many people there and we were standing up talking. I don't think we would have sat down. We had great attendance. We had no bling to give out, essentially, but people just wanted to talk, and it was real positive conversation, lots of ideas. Saw Councilor Lockhart and his family, but so anyway.
Stayed away. I know my wife said you don't.
Don't go over there, you'll never get away. So, had a meeting of the Albany County Mental Health Advisory Board, and we met. Things are progressing, programs developing, and they're continuing to get ready for the critical incident training for officers in the county. That was the big thing. On Monday the 11th, the Albany County Housing Coalition met, and the 4 subcommittees each gave initial presentation, and we will be having the final meeting of this coalition on September the 8th. We've been meeting for 18 months now. It has involved about 30 to 50 people. 50 in the beginning. It's kind of pared down to 30 diehards, but we've done an awful lot of work, and we will be inviting the public on the 8th to attend that meeting, and the 4 work groups will be giving their final reports. And in between all of that, I met with the Albany County Housing and Land Trust Advisory Board, and we are, number one, putting in a letter of intent to apply for an Elbogan grant to upstart this 501c3, and on Monday, August 11th, we received official designation by the state as a 501c3. So we now have a nonprofit land trust that will begin to move forward with a number of initiatives. Number one, to raise money. Then this morning was the swearing-in ceremony of 2 new officers and a new dispatch person who was highly praised by the department and came with his entire family. It was really, it's always heartwarming event. So your mayor has been very busy, and those are just the official things. And Wednesday, we have airport board, 8 o'clock in the morning, and that is that. The last thing we'll do right now is if you can please review the agenda for next week. And my first question would be, are there any suggestions for change to the consent agenda? Anything? No? Nope. Next, the regular agenda.
I have a comment.
Yes, Counselor Newman.
Since we haven't worked on any of the surface water, I'm going to put a motion in to postpone item 11 until, I don't remember what date I picked. October 7th. So we'll push that out so we can at least work on the program.
And
because we have those education.
it may be that counselors may want to engage in the discussion that we were never able to have during reading one. So I would anticipate that we will engage in discussion, which it's hard to proceed with anything else until we have discussion. So
Yeah, we didn't have discussion we didn't have discussion and with the education stuff coming up that the counselors are going to go to, it's just not the right time to vote on it.
well, it's already been brought to the floor, and
I hope the motion will.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that will remain on the agenda. Yes, Counselor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be in attendance on Tuesday. I wish I could, but I'm not going to be able to. I still have proposals to save money and to have something I think is very workable, but I want to be here to have that discussion, and it's not just a pie in the sky. I really have something I think is very, very plausible, and I want to have the opportunity to talk about it, but I will not be here on Tuesday.
Okay.
Which was the other reason for the motion.
It could be that if we already have a resolution that's continuing that has work with that, and that would provide opportunity for that type of discussion as well. So just a consideration. But I think your input's going to be very important, and I look forward to hearing your idea. So that's good. City Manager, did you have anything? All righty. I think we are finished. The meeting is adjourned.